guys, welcome back to my channel. For the past couple of days, I've been using Chandelure in Master League Premier, and it's actually good. It's not just a spice pick. It is really good because a lot of people are not prepared, first of all, for Skeledirge in Master League Premier. And if they are prepared for Skeledirge, they're not going to be prepared for another fire and ghost type. So I've been trying to take advantage of the current meta and get as much use from Chandelure as I can. I absolutely love this Pokemon, so any opportunity I get to use it, I am going to take that opportunity. And I was so happy with how it performed for me. A lot of people are running double fairy backlines, and this double fire backline is going to work very well for you if you are seeing double fairy backlines. Even if you're seeing like a backline with, let's say, an Annihilate or Steel type backlines, then this team is going to work out for you really well. The team is going to be Dragonite on the lead with Skeledirge as a safe swap and Chandelure as a closer. So the idea is basically you'll draw out the water type or the fire type counter. Sometimes you'll draw out a Dragonite, sometimes you'll draw out a Gyarados with Skeledirge. And once you've drawn that out, you don't use any shields on Skeledirge. You want to save those shields for Chandelure, because usually your opponent is only going to have one answer to fire types on their team, and then your Chandelure will be able to sweep if you save those shields for it. So a lot of the times I will draw out, let's say, a Gyarados with my Skeledirge. I'll get it pretty low, and then I'll be able to finish it off with Dragonite. And then I'll save both shields for Chandelure, and then Chandelure will be able to sweep because usually my opponent will have, let's say, an Annihilate and a Steel type left, and Chandelure with shields should be able to take care of those perfectly fine. This team has two really big weaknesses. One is common, and the other one, for some reason, has disappeared from the Master League Premier meta in the past few days. And those are going to be Hisui and Avalugg, first of all. That's going to be good against the entire team. And Waterfall Primarina. But I've been able to take care of quite a few Waterfall Primarinas with this team, and I have several examples of me winning against a team with a Waterfall Primarina in this video. Hisui and Avalugg, by the way, is the Pokemon that's kind of disappeared from the meta. I know a lot of people were thinking it was going to be everywhere, but for some reason, we're not seeing it used a lot. I guess it's because a lot of people are running Annihilate and a lot of people are running Steel types. So I guess they scared away the Avaluggs. But that means I've been able to perform so well with this team. I climbed around 200 points. I went from the 2,700s to the mid 2,900s, so I'm regaining my elo slowly. Today I got another 5-0 with this team, and I would highly recommend it if you guys actually have it, because I think you can actually reach Legend with this team. This is all dependent, of course, on if the meta stays the way it is, where it's very Steel type and Fairy heavy. But anyways, I'm going to stop talking now. I have so many nice battles for you guys. Let's get into them. All right, up first, we are going to see a Magnezone lead, and I am immediately going to swap into my Skeledirge to draw out a potential Gyarados. But in this case, we do draw out that Dragonite. I'm completely fine with this. They let me land a Disarming Voice, and I'm even able to reach a second one because here they really want to go for a full farm down, and we take a shield from them. This is going to be so good for us because we have that Chandelure in the back, and Chandelure with shields down is going to be absolutely destroying. Again, I didn't shield the Dragon Claw on my Dragonite because I want to save both shields for my Chandelure. I go for a superpower on the Magnezone so that I can take their final shield. And now my opponent has 0 shields, I have 2 shields, and they are going to have an Ursaluna in the back. Chandelure is going to be resisting the fast move, which is Tackle. It is going to be a normal type move. Chandelure is a ghost type, and we are absolutely going to destroy this Ursaluna, going for those flame charges. And then my opponent brings in their Magnezone. They go for a Mirror Shot here. They have enough for a Mirror Shot and a Wall Charge, but Chandelure is going to win CMP on the flame charge, and we're able to take that Magnezone out. GG's to our opponent. Moving on to the next battle, we are going to see another Magnezone lead. Again, immediately swapping into that Skeledirge, and we draw out the Gyarados. This is exactly where we want to see it. I go immediately for that Shadow Ball, and my opponent goes ahead and shields it. Now, they let me reach a Disarming Voice as well. This is going to be good. I just need a little bit of damage on this Gyarados so that I could take care of it with my Dragonite. They decide to throw a move here, And most likely this Gyarados is not going to be running Outrage because they are running that Dragon Breath. So they go for a Crunch here, I let that go, and then I'm able to farm them down with Dragonite. Now I'm gonna bring my Chandelure into Magnezone immediately. They bait us with a Mirror Shot, unfortunately, and they take a shield from us, and my opponent is going to have an Annihilate in the back. I was calling that my opponent would have that Annihilate in the back because Annihilate and Gyarados backlines are very common with a Steel-type lead. I'm just going to be going for the Flame Charges to buff our Chandelure's attack. I know I'm not going to be able to land a move on the Magnezone because they are going to be able to reach a Wild Charge, but I need that Incinerate damage. That way I can come in with my Dragonite and Dragon Breath this Magnezone down and take that win. GG's to our opponent. Moving on to the next battle, we are going to see a Dragonite on the lead. Okay, this is where it gets a little bit tricky because I need to take care of the Dragonite with my own Dragonite, but also if my opponent has a Waterfall Gyarados in the back, I am basically going to lose this game. I let the Dragon Claw go because my opponent didn't shield, and then I swap into Skeledirge, and guess what? My opponent is going to have that Waterfall Gyarados. Unfortunately, there are some teams that you just can't do much against. And I shield the Aqua Tail here in a last-ditch attempt to potentially get some damage off on this Gyarados. It's still in the yellow, but of course, because I did that, they're going to call that my backline is very weak to water types, so they're going to go ahead and shield their own Gyarados. And here they are going to be able to reach 2 moves on my Chandelure. This next Aqua Tail is going to land, and they can bring their Dragonite back in and farm us down. So unfortunately, we are going to take a loss there. On to the next match, we are going to see an absolutely terrible lead for us. It is going to be Togekiss, and I immediately swap into my Skeledirge, and we draw out the Waterfall Gyarados. At least we're drawing it out here, and they let the Shadow Ball go, so this is okay for us. They even let us reach a Disarming Voice, so I'm expecting my opponent to go ahead and shield here. Thankfully, we get a shield out of the way, and I can bring my Dragonite in and go for a farm down. Now, this is where my opponent gets really smart because they bait us with the Aqua Tail, and I don't want to invest that second shield. They are going to be able to land an Outrage on our Dragonite, so really unfortunate for us. I fell for the bait, and I really needed some health on that Dragonite to take care of this Snorlax. Unfortunately, the Snorlax is going to be doing a lot of damage to our Chandelure, and I am going to go ahead and shield here, even though it's not the most ideal. I was expecting my opponent to have a potential Earthquake, which is what a lot of people were running their Snorlaxes with, but I'm going to go ahead and top left because I am not going to be able to take care of that Togekiss with my Dragonite. So we take a loss there, but that's okay. It's still a positive set. Moving on to the next set of battles, we are going to be up against Big ML, and we are going to see a Magnezone on the lead. You guys know I like to swap into that Skeledirge immediately, and this time we see the Core Breaker. It is going to be that Waterfall Primarina. I go immediately for that Shadow Ball, but unfortunately my opponent shields it, and I really need to get some damage off on this Primarina, but they are going to survive in the green, and now I'm going to have to bring in my Dragonite up against it and try to do as much damage as I can. I'm going to build up to almost 2 superpowers, and then I'm going to go for a superpower here. We get the Primarina into the red with our Dragonite, but my opponent goes ahead and catches the next superpower on their Florges. Okay, I have a win condition here. The 2 Pokemon that my opponent has remaining, Chandelure should do very well against. I'm going to go ahead and shield a Moonblast here because it is going to be doing quite a bit of damage to our Chandelure. Again, Chandelure is very squishy, and I'm just going to take the Florges out with a Flame Charge and the Incinerates. Now, I'm just going to be buffing my Incinerates because I don't think I'm going to be able to land a move on the Magnezone, so I'm just going to be doing as much damage as I can to it. My opponent has enough for a Mirror Shot and a Wild Charge, so I swapped immediately into my Dragonite, hoping that I could catch a Wild Charge. And this is where my opponent messed up because I think they could have stayed in with the Magnezone and taken our Dragonite out, and then I would have brought my Chandelure in, and I would have been forced to throw my move, and they could have potentially caught the move from the Chandelure onto their Primarina, and then come back in with their Magnezone and gone for a Wild Charge up against our Chandelure and taken us out. But they swap into that Primarina. I'm able to incinerate them down with our Chandelure, and Chandelure wins CMP over Magnezone, so I'm able to take that win. Moving on to the next battle, we are going to be up against an Annihilate, and I just have to watch out for that Ice Punch, but I guess they don't have it because they go ahead and they swap into a Snorlax. I'm going to go for a Superpower and then swap out, but unfortunately it was CMP tie, so I'm going to have to take a Body Slam on our Dragonite. Very unfortunate. I really wanted to keep my Dragonite healthy. But now I am going to bring in Skeledirge up against the Snorlax, and if I had a way of making sure that my opponent had Superpower and Body Slam, I would have gone for a full farm down, but a lot of Snorlaxes are running Earthquake these days, so I didn't want to risk it. I went for that Disarming Voice, and then I am going to shield the Shadow Ball from the Annihilate. We go for a Disarming Voice of our own, we're able to reach 2, and if my opponent wants to save their Annihilate, they're going to have to double shield. I'm completely fine here with letting my Skeledirge go. My opponent has 0 shields left, and I have a Chandelure in the back. But they went for a Night Slash, so our Skeledirge survived, and they are going to have a Skeledirge of their own in the back. They still have a shield left, so I'm going to go ahead and invest it on the Shadow Ball, and then I'm going to do 2 more Incinerates and go for a Shadow Ball of my own. This should be enough to take the Skeledirge out, and I should be able to reach another move if my opponent doesn't throw their move immediately. So they have to throw their energy, and then I can bring Dragonite in. I have enough energy for a Dragon Claw, and this will be enough to take this Annihilate out. GG's to our opponent. On to the next battle, we are going to see a Gyarados on the lead, and my opponent immediately swaps out of the Gyarados into a Togekiss, which is telling me they probably have Waterfall on that Gyarados. And I'm also calling that my opponent is running a double fairy backline, because Waterfall Gyarados with 2 fairies in the back is very common. I'm going to bring in Skeledirge, of course, up against this Togekiss, and because they shielded my first Shadow Ball, I decide to invest a shield into my Skeledirge to shield that Ancient Power, and I also should be able to reach another move on the Gyarados when they bring it in. Gonna go for that Shadow Ball, and hopefully it lands. My opponent only has 1 shield left, so I'm not expecting them to invest it. I'm going to bring in the Dragonite now, and my opponent has a Primarina in the back, and thank goodness this Primarina is running Charm. So my Chandelure should be doing very well up against this Primarina, but here I have to make a decision if I want to invest my final shield or if I can survive the Disarming Voice. I think I would have survived, but I really need to get this Primarina out of the way, and I really didn't want to invest that final shield because Waterfall Gyarados will usually run Outrage. So here, if they have Outrage, it will be unfortunate for me, but it looks like they don't. They have Crunch, so I am going to be able to reach a Dragon Claw on my Dragonite and take this Gyarados out. I think even if they had gone Outrage, I think I would have survived. But either way, we take that win. GG's to our opponent. Alright, moving on to the next battle, we are going to see a Dragonite on the lead, and our Dragonite has the Buddy Boost, so we are going to be winning CMP up against theirs. We're going to go for the Dragon Claws, and my opponent goes ahead and shields, so they could potentially catch the next one, but they are going to stay in. I'm going to go for that second Dragon Claw, and this should take them out. Now, my water type answer is basically dead, and I have to hope that my opponent doesn't have a Waterfall Gyarados in the back. They bring in Annihilate, and I immediately bring in Skeledirge, and because they're staying in, this is telling me that whatever they have in the back, it is going to be weak to Chandelure. They have a Metagross in the back, and my opponent goes ahead and top lefts. We were easily going to be able to take that win, and that is going to be another positive set with this team, again climbing into the 2800s, and today I climbed back into the 2900s with the team. Up next, we are going to see another Dragonite mirror match, and this time it is going to be a Shadow, but because I have that Buddy Boost, I'm going to win CMP, and I'm going to be able to go for the Dragon Claw first. My opponent goes ahead and shields our first Dragon Claw, and they commit to a full farm down. So I'm going to bring Skeledirge in. I manage to sneak and Incinerate, and hopefully it's enough damage to take the Dragonite out, because that means they won't be able to get 2 Dragon Claws off on our Skeledirge. My opponent is going to have a Snorlax in the back. I'm just going to go for these Disarming Voices up against the Snorlax, and then I swap into Chandelure because I didn't want my opponent to farm me down. But as soon as they see the Chandelure, they go ahead and they top left. They were probably really weak in the back. GG's to our opponent. Moving on to the next match, we are going to see a Haxorus on the lead. This is another really good lead for us. And here I decide to invest a shield into my Dragonite. My opponent is going to bring in an Excadrill. I actually probably should have no-shielded the Breaking Swipe and then brought in my Skeledirge, because now, unfortunately, this Excadrill might be able to reach 2 moves. So I have to take that first Drill Run. And yep, they're able to reach that second move, and I'm just going to bring in Chandelure and go for a farm down here. But my opponent is able to reach another move on their Excadrill, and they take my final shield. And now I am going to be shieldless up against this Haxorus, so I have to go for that Shadow Ball immediately. I don't want to take a Night Slash if they have Night Slash, and it looks like my opponent is going to have a Magnezone in the back. If I had a shield left, I would have been able to shield this Wild Charge, but I don't. I'm going to have to let my Chandelure go, but that also means that my opponent is going to be debuffing themselves, and I know that my Dragonite can live one Wild Charge. I'm able to reach back-to-back Dragon Claws, so I'm going to go for the first one and then throw that second one immediately. I think that was CMP tie. We're going to be able to take that Magnezone out and take that win. I should point out my Dragonite is buddy boosted and it will survive in a lot of sticky situations. On to the next battle, we are going to see an Excadrill on the lead, and I usually like to throw a superpower and take a Rock Slide before swapping out into my Skeledirge, but in this situation my opponent swaps into a Waterfall Primarina, and I can't swap out. I have to stay in with my Dragonite and do as much damage to this Primarina as I can, so I go for 2 superpowers, and then I swap out into my Skeledirge, and now I just have to go for a Disarming Voice to take this Primarina out. Gonna go for it, and my opponent actually decides to shield. Okay, at least we're getting shields out of the way, and in order for me not to throw my next move, they go ahead and they throw their energy. Now, I can bring in my Chandelure and go for a farm down. I know that they're not going to be able to reach another move on Primarina, and then they either have to bring in that Excadrill or show me what they have in the back. They bring Excadrill in, which is telling me that whatever is in the back, it is going to be weak to this Fire and Ghost type. I'm going to go for a Flame Charge here. I didn't want my opponent to reach another move, but they shield. They're saving that Excadrill, and I go ahead and I snipe with my Dragonite because they were going to be able to reach another move on my Chandelure, and I don't want to give up my final shield. I was actually calling that they would have that Florges in the back, and I do need that shield for a Moonblast because even though it's resisted, again, Chandelure, very squishy, it's going to be taking a lot of damage from the Moonblast. We're able to shield their move, take them out with a Shadow Ball, and we take that win. Moving on to the next battle, this is a good one. We see the Magnezone on the lead, swap immediately into our Skeledirge, and we draw out a Shadow Feraligatr. I don't want to invest any shields, but luckily we lived the Hydro Cannon and we're able to get the Shadow Ball off on the Shadow Feraligatr and put them in the red, and that means that they can't reach a move on our Dragonite. They're going to bring that Magnezone back in, and I'm going to go ahead and bait with a Dragon Claw. We take a shield from them, and then I swap into my Chandelure. I'm going to shield here, whatever this is. I'm going to go ahead and invest my shield because I don't want to take a Wild Charge, and a lot of people will Wild Charge and dip, but it looks like my opponent is going to have an Annihilate in the back. We take their final shield from them. I'm going to invest my final shield as well. Luckily, it is a Shadow Ball, and then I'm going to go for a Shadow Ball here. I think I could have gone for a Flame Charge, and it would have been enough to take them out, but they are going to be forced to throw their Wild Charge immediately, and that means I'm going to be able to bring in Dragonite and go for a Superpower before my opponent can reach a move and take them out. GG's to our opponent. Moving on to the final match of the video, we're going to be up against an Excadrill, and this time, instead of going for the superpower immediately, I'm gonna bait, but because I'm up against a friend and someone who knows my playstyle, they're gonna call the bait. I should have just gone for that superpower, and then this Excadrill would have been out of the way, but I have to stay in with my Dragonite and take another Rock Slide. I didn't want to invest any shields, and unfortunately, I do let my Dragonite go. Now I swap into Skeledirge, and my opponent immediately swaps into their own Dragonite before seeing what comes in, and that means I am going to be able to hit for super effective damage with the Disarming Voices. They shield the first one, and they let the second one go. Now, I thought I could be ambitious and go for a full Incinerate down here, but I recognize that my opponent was going to be able to reach another Dragon Claw, so I go for that Flame Charge, but my opponent shields it, which is telling me that they're weak in the back to Chandelure. If I had just not gone for that bait, that superpower bait, then I might have had a chance to win this. I should have just gone for the superpower up against the Excadrill, and then the backline I could have taken care of with my Dragonite, if I still had that, and my Skeledirge. But unfortunately, That's just the way it is. Sometimes you win the mind games and sometimes you lose the mind games. That game was still very close, but GG's to my opponent. They are going to be outplaying me there in that match. Either way, that's still going to be a 4-1, and we're going to be ending this video with a positive set, and I really hope you guys enjoyed it. I really like this team, and I can highly, highly recommend it to you guys. Of course, as long as the meta stays similar to what we're seeing, then this team is going to be performing very well for you guys. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys like my content, please consider subscribing, maybe leave a like, it helps me out so much, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye bye!